An extraordinary life and a critical moment. Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin, and as most, if not all of you will know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed away, leaving a vacancy on the Supreme Court at this critical time. Now, before I go into any kind of what now political analysis, I do want to spend a moment just to acknowledge the extraordinary life and contribution made by Ruth Ginsburg to judicial thought and the legal academia. Many of her decisions will stand the test of time across decades and centuries to come as exemplars in how the law should be interpreted and applied. And I say this as someone that's increasingly conservative as I get on. Ruth Ginsburg is clearly, a progressive Democrat appointee, and she would make no illusions of that. But nonetheless, her approach to applying justice, not just the letter of the law, does have considerable merit. She applied a compassion as well as fairness, and she inspired entire generations of people who might otherwise have been deterred from the profession of law, who are highly capable and accomplished to get involved. And she just had an extraordinary work ethic. I think until like the very end, she had missed none or one sittings of the Supreme Court. So her commitment to the job that she was appointed and confirmed in is second to none. So, thoughts and prayers to everyone who cares for her family, and this is coming out before any funerals or anything like that. So I don't know what the tributes will be said, but I'm sure that they will be very moving and certainly justified. And yet there is an extraordinary moment that this happened right before the presidential election. And for those that just aren't as familiar with the process, the US government has a system of checks and balances. You have the executive, which is the office of the presidency in the White House. You have the legislature, which is the Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And then you have the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, of the three, the Supreme Court is the only life appointment, right? So what happens is the president nominates a candidate for the Supreme Court when a vacancy becomes available. The Senate questions and then confirms that appointment, or they reject it. And then once that confirmation process is complete, that new justice, Supreme Court justice, has lifetime tenure until they pass away or they retire. Right? And therefore, it is an enormously consequential decision made by the president. Now, the president, President Trump, this will be his third Supreme Court justice nomination. But of the three, this one is by far the most important, because the first two were, they were significant, but they were essentially replacing Republican appointees, one who had passed away and another who retired because there was a Republican president and he knew that his successor would be appointed on the same orientation as himself. So in the United States, the Supreme Court is enormously powerful and consequential, because every decision, every presidential executive order, every federal law, every question over social policy and legislation and norms, they can all be appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States, wherein 9 justices decide. And just in recent years, that was massively important. Like same-sex marriage, for example, only exists at the federal level in the United States because 5 Supreme Court justices agreed. That was 5 people that imposed that decision on the entirety of the United States of America. So there is a strong partisan divide on that court, and it is probably the most important branch of government at the moment, right? And I'll explain why. So you have Democrat-nominated Supreme Court justices, whose job it is, they all have the same job, but who tend to view the law in terms of how it is applied equitably and fairly across the community, and therefore are much more likely to, let's say, use what they see as the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law in order to, make their decisions. Conversely, Republican nominees are usually staunch originalists, right? They will look at the law and say, okay, if someone needs to change the law, that's the role of the legislature. It's not the role of the Supreme Court to make that decision. And they would often say, even if I personally don't agree with the way the law is applied, it's not my decision to rewrite it. My role is to apply it. So they're much more staunch defenders of the Constitution, of due processes of government. They just have a different orientation towards the law. The right in America will use a slur against the left and say, things like legislating from the bench, i.e. making decisions based on what you want the law to be rather than what the law is. But then conversely, progressives will say Republicans are unwilling to modernize anything in the law and will just rule based on it being the 18th century, right? So now these are just views, but it does go to the enormity of the consequence of this. Like if President Trump signs an executive order, the people who decide its legality is the Supreme Court. So if he says, I'm introducing a Muslim ban, well, it's the Supreme Court that decides if it's lawful. If he says there can't be any tech censorship, it's the Supreme Court that decides if it's lawful, right? They are the referees by which the legislature and the executive, who are in tension, decide who has what power. Now, the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, aside from the fact that she has been a staunch progressive thinker on the Supreme Court, she's probably been the most senior, most charismatic, strongest personality on that bench for the Democrat side of politics. Her passing, just on those grounds alone, is a significant blow for them. But unlike Trump's previous nominees of Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, who were replacing previous Republican appointees, this is a Republican president with a Republican Senate choosing a previously Democrat spot. Now, that means that if Trump, before the election, nominates and then the Senate confirms a new Supreme Court justice, it will be a 6-3 split on the Supreme Court, thereby giving the Republican Party unfettered kind of free reign, at least in perception, in theory, over the legislation they want to pass. Now, of course, once a justice is confirmed, they then apply their own judicial judgment to things. So just because you've been nominated and confirmed by a Republican president and Senate doesn't mean that they're going to always rule with the Republicans. And in fact, you see that with Justice Roberts all of the time. There was actually one case where I think Neil Gorsuch dissented from Trump. So, they're not servants of the Republican Party, but certainly if you're choosing from a pool of people that have been socialized and raised within the party organization, then obviously they'll have that orientation and bias. So what has kept it in check has been the balance between the presidency and the Senate, the fact that typically there has been enough changes in the presidency between parties to keep it sort of aligned. But Trump has had 3 Supreme Court nominations in 4 years. That's a third of the Supreme Court transforming. So this will be an intergenerational impact, this decision. It'll be the most consequential decision that President Trump probably makes in his entire 4 years, assuming that he does nominate someone and the Senate does confirm them. Now, what does it mean for the United States? This is explosive because the Democrats will absolutely be beside themselves in apoplectic rage that Trump as being able to nominate Ruth Bader Ginsburg's successor. This could actually be the spark that permanently tears asunder the compact between the Democrats and the Republicans, binding the whole glue together. We're already seeing a significant deterioration in civil society within the United States, with deep hyperpartisan hatreds, the significant divide in ideology between left and right that now seems implacable to overcome. This will be seen by Democrats as a sheer power grab. Now, on the one hand, normal constitutional process, president, Senate, and so forth, but in the context of it being right before a presidential election, and it will be perceived as rushed and cynical, especially given the fact that when President Obama was in his final year of his presidency, he did nominate Justice Garland to be on the Supreme Court, and the Republican-controlled Senate refused to consider it for the entire year until the election, right? So it will be perceived as a compressed rush job to get Trump's nomination confirmed in the Senate in the, whatever it is, 6 weeks or so before the election. So I can understand Democrat frustration, even though that will just be the reality of politics. Like, if the Democrats were in the reverse situation, one would assume they would do the same thing. But in the context of a hyper-partisan, bitter, contested political space in which the very bonds of kinship that tie the different citizens and states together are at its all-time fractured low since, the American Civil War, then who knows where this will lead, because the decision will be absolutely consequential. For example, the fact that abortion is lawful across all of the United States is a decision known as Roe v. Wade, and the Republican dream, particularly among the evangelicals, but the Republican Party generally, has been to see that overturned, that states make the decision over the legality of abortion within their actual state, that it shouldn't be a federal law, because they don't believe that abortion is either moral or should be in any way lawful. Their determination has been to overturn that decision for at least a generation, and is why, in general, Republicans have valued Supreme Court nominations more highly than Democrats because of the social impact that the Supreme Court traditionally has. The Supreme Court also decides, in a contested presidency, who wins. Now, this is the nightmare scenario. So when George W. Bush and Al Gore in 2000 had the election, it went to the Supreme Court because of the contested space of the Florida votes, and the Supreme Court decided that George W. Bush would be president of the United States. Entirely possible that Trump nominates and confirms a Supreme Court justice. There is a contested election. It goes to the Supreme Court for a decision, which then hands back a Trump re-election victory, to the abject calamity of the United States in terms of its constitutional crisis, that you would have Democrats potentially breaking from the United States, seeking a civil conflict. Now, I don't say that lightly. I do think the United States is getting to the brink here, and this could easily be the spark that lights the fire, the California gender reveal party, if you will. So I don't know where this is going to lead. I know definitely Trump and the Republicans will be keen to get the nomination up. Certainly, this will all play into the election itself. Hard to know exactly how. So if, for example, for whatever reason, they fail to nominate and confirm a new Supreme Court justice, I think the Republicans will punish Trump and the Senate for that they have failed to deliver an outcome that all Republicans highly value. So turnout would then be low. It will remind both sides of politics the importance of Supreme Court nominations when it comes to the presidency. Unsure how that plays out. Whether it absolutely makes all evangelicals and traditional Republicans and Trump's base ecstatic at this moment that they, in frenzy, come out and vote in huge numbers. That could be an outcome. Another outcome is that Democrats who previously wouldn't have been motivated to vote for Biden because they think, Biden is vacuous, dementia, whatever, they might go, actually, no, I do need to go out and vote for Democrats because otherwise the Supreme Court, we just hand that to the Republicans. There'll be 9 Supreme Court justices on the, instead of just a few. So that's a possibility. It could also just lead to massive despondency in the Democratic Party, that they're so demoralized that 3 Supreme Court justices have been nominated and confirmed by Republicans. All the other Supreme Court justices will have quite a number of years in them. I'm not sure who else would be next to retire. So that means that they might not turn out to vote. They're just like, well, it's all over. They might turn out to vote with a view to create civil disturbance after the vote is known. I mean, I'm really genuinely worried that we are getting to a point where the vote could be super close. And if it is, then it will go to Supreme Court, and whatever decision is handed down, diabolical. But nevertheless, we are definitely going to see some significant change. Assuming that the civil disturbance can be controlled and we have a convincing victory for one side or the other, the impact of replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg cannot be overstated. They'll have a significant Republican majority, so things like firearms, constitution, freedom of expression, tech giant censorship, taxation, state rights, individual rights. We're going to see across the board. You'll see things banned about intersectionality, critical race theory. All of that will be washed away by the Supreme Court as illegal, and of course, abortion will be the big one. So maybe in a future thing I'll talk about abortion. I think it's a really interesting area of public policy, but certainly contested in the United States. So with that, again, veil Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Enormous depth of respect for her learning and commitment to public life. And I think that should be said irrespective of what one's political leanings or even the views on the decisions, because one thing you can say for Ginsburg is that she would make her decisions in good faith, that she genuinely believed her judgments were in the best interests of the least among us, which I think is a noble motivation, and married to that a tremendous intellect, which has contributed to our understanding of law. So well done to a life well lived, and we'll watch this space. All right, if you found value in this, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. What's your experience of the Supreme Court of the United States? And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.